SGInnovate has really been pioneering and pushing forward the deep tech mandate. What are some of the shifts you've seen in the deep tech ecosystem over the past couple of years?
What came to mind just now, which is why I was smiling, is, for example, AI, right? I mean, 4 years ago, we used to call that deep tech. It's shallow tech today, right? Everything is AI. So I think the ecosystem shifts so rapidly, it's hard for us to kind of keep pace. But really from an investment standpoint, it's not something that's really sexy, that excites me, but more from a perspective of convergence. If you talk about convergence of AI, you talk about convergence of, industrial robotics, you're talking about advanced materials, you're talking about sustainability, all of these coming together, and startups are building full stack solutions again. So these are going on to solve some of the bigger problems in the world, and that's what I think personally excites me as well on a day-to-day basis, to come to work and say, what are we doing and what are the challenges we're solving? There's been a significant shift of point solutions because startups were doing point solutions. Those are notoriously hard to sell, because when you sell a point solution, the customer has to do an integration. Whereas if it's a full stack, it's so much easier. It's a plug and play type environment. So we're starting to see a lot of plug and play environments coming in. And something else that I'm observing as well is these startups need commercial traction, right? We invest very early stage, so they need commercial traction to survive. And I'm starting to see these corporates, maybe because of the excitement from CVCs, but also because of business unit awareness, trying to meet the startups halfway, both from a technical perspective as well as a budgetary standpoint, to truly accelerate that. So it's sort of like a non-linear value creation, and I think that's pretty fantastic to see in deep tech.
I like the word about non-linear value creation. So I'm going to ask Katie, was it non-linear for your journey of being on the board over the past 10 years?
Yeah, so maybe take the question from two perspectives, right? One from the CVC, my CVC job. We are in the regulator industry, so we are very conscious of what kind of equipment we bring into the network, right? So I would say we are very conservative. The companies need to be a lot more mature. It goes, and because the way we invest, financial return is only one of the measure of success. The other measure is how these companies, the startups, work with our business units, and because of how because of our being in the regulator industry, we need mature products that are tested before they come in. So the startups need to be a lot more mature before we actually are able to bring them into the network. Now, the other perspective on the other job as a director on the startup, right? So NanoFirm is listed on the SGX. If you know the story, right? This the gentleman got his PhD in the UK, came to Singapore as a professor, and decided to set up a business, right? And that was in 1999, right? The company was finally listed on the Stock Exchange of Singapore in 2020. So just imagine the number of years. He outlasted two sets of investors, right? Basically, investors came in, the fund ran out, expired, end of fund life, repurchase the stock, get in a new group of investors. And then by the time I got to know him, we were in the third round. So we were the third round. We helped to bring him public, and this was not within Singtel, right? But so you just think of that journey, right? And we talk about it being a point solution. You can't sell a point solution, right? You're deep tech. You are very, very focused. You are you're just a point solution, right? How do you bring this point solution and have it being adopted by the market, by customer, right? Evangelize, bring it into a service or a product to the end user. It's a challenge, right? And especially if you're building equipment, right? The capex, the amount of capital you require just to build that, have it tested, fail, or succeed partially, right? You hope that it fails quickly, but you succeed partially and then you carry on. So the ability to raise money and continue to grow, I think that is the persistence that as a startup entrepreneur you have to go through.
Often picking the right market, the right geography is really important. I think India is one that's really special because you have capital, talent, and market size sort of all nicely in one. A lot of us here are obviously based in Singapore, around Southeast Asia. Where do you see the parallels and what can we learn?
So I can speak to India, where most of my experience has been, and like you just pointed out, that there is this combination of talent which has emerged over a period of time, a large market which is increasingly aspirational for new products, new technologies, and so on, and of course capital is now available. So this is just fast tracking the movement of India from being a very emerging nascent market to a rapidly changing consumption market, right? So the cycles that you see in deep tech, because of this triage of things, is very accelerated, right? So comparison is in the previous company that I was working with, we started breaking the ground for a factory for a two-wheeler company called Ola Electric just in 2020, and we listed last year, so 4 years, and we are selling about 30,000, 40,000 vehicles when we listed a month, right? So that's an example of all the convergence working together in tandem. Of course, there are exceptions, but this is a unique thing that we see in our market, and several similar markets, I guess, many similarities to China in that sense.
For the private sector, deep tech players, maybe some of them are here in this room. What is the best way to engage with folks like SGInnovate to really sort of work together and build the deep tech ecosystem here?
What I found fascinating when I came into SGInnovate, I came in to do venture building because my past life was really setting up new business units and adjacencies for multinationals as new revenue generating areas. And I came in to build startups. So really building startups from IP to doing the business plan to commercialization and getting them funded. I think that's where the sort of the public-private partnership aspect comes into play. And I think Singapore is one of the really, really incredibly supportive ecosystems that if you can't build a startup and succeed here, you're unlikely to succeed anywhere else in the world, honestly, because there's so much of non-dilutive grants that the government is willing to give you. There are proof of concepts grants that ESG is willing to give you. So last year, year and a half ago, we actually came up at SGInnovate with something that we call the dual pathway. So that's my little child. I'm very excited to talk to you about it. We decided that we were going to take IP from universities or hospitals or, Center for Quantum Technologies, places that people produce brilliant ideas, but they don't necessarily have or want to build them out into companies or know the know-how on how to build them out into companies, right? So we would screen them. We picked up IPs, maybe 1 out of 200. We'd actually build a business plan. We'd go out and pitch for non-dilutive grants, a couple of million, so not insignificant, for a 2-year duration, put milestones in and build out this company, right, within SGInnovate. We hire a team, we act as CEOs, we get POCs and all of that. In the meantime, while we're pushing the technology from lab to market, we're pushing the technology readiness, we're also syndicating around. That's where we work with the private investors. We're incorporating the company, we're syndicating around, making sure that this is something that private investment money can go into and that it is commercially viable. And we also put our money into that company. So what happens is the company is accelerating towards commercial traction or regulatory approval in the case of healthcare or clinical trials or whatever the case might be. And the project, so to speak, is accelerating towards the manufacture to scale. So you're kind of at the end of 1.5 years, if you combine the two, you've accelerated the production of deep tech into the market and commercial strategy. So that's something I think is a brilliant public-private partnership that comes from our experience at SGInnovate. Yeah.
Maybe I can add on a bit. Yeah, I think pitch for Singapore, right? We are a great supporter, and there's this public-private collaboration. So Singtel, we used to run together with another government agency, just focusing on cybersecurity. right? So we run a program, and they're just we have startups come in, just to promote the awareness on cybersecurity. So we do that. And then at Nanofilm, and this is public information, we actually have we announced a corporate lab. It's partially funded by us as well as NTU, National Technology University. And that's actually to build upon our core IP and build additional applications in specific areas of research, right? So because I would say we are one company that continues to invest heavily on R&D, right, into applications that potentially could leverage off our platform technology.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think it's nice to hear there's so much support, but I think we also know the reality of the challenges, right? So I want to ask Ravi, really, how do you think as a CVC about the long horizons it takes to incubate first a successful startup, but a deep tech startup takes even longer, right? And of course, we all have business priorities. So really, how do you balance that?
Unlike a conventional startup, if I may call that term, deep tech requires a lot of patience. You have to survive the first few years without revenues and keep raising money on promise that something will end up coming out which is useful and will have a product market fit. And therefore, the role of CVCs, if you look at the proportion of CVCs that participate in deep tech versus conventional, you will see more disproportionate partnership with CVCs because they have probably, they know this from their internal learnings that it is a harder journey. It requires a lot more patience. And getting CVCs involved upfront and working with them, de-risking with them as pilot customers, etc. Those are some things that are the only way out, probably. Especially in markets which are more emerging, the benefit of grants and so forth, which you alluded to, is absent. So you need to, work with CVCs. You need to push yourself to bring out products which are, let's say, not ideal, but still test the ground in real markets. These are very different approaches than what you would have otherwise done, right? So those are trade-offs that you have to make to keep surviving the day and living another day so that you eventually bring the product out.
Nice. I'd like to peel back the onion a little more, and I'm going to throw this to Katie. Probably what of Ravi said a lot echoes with you, but like you say, you guys are part of a regulated business where there's an additional layer of complexity. How do you think about facilitating those partnerships, those pilots, when even the application to the regulator could take 12 to 18 months already?
Yeah. So again, right, we work very hard on this engagement. We call it engagement between the startups and our business units, right? And the challenge, right, is that the mentality. If you're the business units, and I think Ting Lip spoke a bit about it as well. For the business units, they want something to be able to bring to market immediately. Right, what's my next quarter? What's my next half year? How is this going to impact us? So I think that being able to see, convince them or share with them the vision, right? That there is an opportunity on that. We have quite a few case studies that I can share, offline, right? But where the business units started off being very skeptical, and then subsequently, when they see the value, maybe a year after two, after our initial introduction, and then finally the relationship taking off, right? But I would say those are not 100% of our efforts, right? I mean, not 100% hit rate. Hit rate is not as high. And as a result, because of all this, them being regulated business, the startups tend to be a bit more mature. They have the business units want the startups to mature to be able to show, the resilience and before they bring it in. So I think that is honestly that's the challenge, right? It's for any startups, and I think for deep tech startups, the challenge is even greater because you have to identify the carrier of your, I will say it's the carrier of your technology, right? Because you can't just sell one point solution. No one will buy it from you, right? Even if you promise that it's 10 times better.
So much wisdom from the panelists, but we're running out of time. So as the last question, I will ask the same question to all three panelists. So far, we have spoken about deep tech like it's a single category, right? But of course not, right? It's like saying I want to build a mobile app. It's like, what kind? So maybe the question is, what area, aspect, sector of deep tech excites you the most?
Obviously, the AI ML from a perspective of healthcare, nuclear fusion, I think if that's actually successful at scale, we did one recent investment in that. I think that's pretty exciting. That'll change, that'll be a massive game changer for the way we look at energy. And of course, coming back to home, if we look at from a Singapore standpoint, something very practical, and I think Keelok alluded to it, is the opportunity right now for Singapore-based startups to take on industrial automation. Provide that whole full stack solution in industrial automation, everything from robotics to older systems to legacy systems. We have the advantage of being in ASEAN. There's a lot of manufacturing moving out of China. It's coming up in ASEAN. Singapore has these software-based companies that have interoperability platforms. They're building connectivity tools. So I think we can really capitalize on that, make some quick money over the next 3-4 years. Yeah.
For me, it's of course, all the areas that you mentioned are very exciting. Space tech is very exciting. All the possibilities that are opening up are very exciting, and this is something that we are actively looking at. And of course, semiconductors is an ongoing theme for TDK Ventures, and we continue to explore what other things can be innovated within semiconductors. So those are areas of interest beyond.
Two areas that are very important for us, given that the data center is a growth business, and the growth business for Singtel as a group, right? One area is data center and GPU as a service, right? And we all know that this is a huge energy consumer, right? So in terms of how to better utilize energy or be more efficient, I think that's very critical for us. The second one would be water, right? So again, water usage, huge water usage in the data centers, and how we can use water to cool the systems better. So these are areas that I would say would be of a good interest to us.